evening, everybody. This webinar will be recorded, and so it will be able to go onto our website for members to be able to see it. So good evening and welcome to EISA's fourth webinar on emotional intelligence in engineering, science and mining. So my name's Laurel Collin and I'm the board of Emotional Intelligence Society of Australia. And it's great to get together to discuss emotional intelligence, possible solutions to problems that we find in work and life, and you know, and to have a new view of, you know, how we can view our world. But first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm recording this webinar from the lands of the Whadjuk people, but I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands in which we work today. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and I acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this city and the nation in which we live. Cool. So what we'll do is we do use the chat button, and I'd just like you to pop into the chat button now where you're from, if that's possible.
Yeah, I'll come home too then. Yep.
Okay. Oh, Japan. Are you here in Perth, EISA, or are you actually? Okay. So you've zoomed in from there. Great. Thornley, right. Okay. So I'd also like you to, yeah, lots of different places. Just in the chat, just tell us how you're feeling tonight. You know, we know that self-awareness is a vital part of emotional intelligence, because if we can reflect on how we're feeling, then it gives us a really good insight as to how we respond or why we respond to things. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Feeling all right? Great. Well, sit back and enjoy. I'm listening to today's webinar. It's an interactive webinar, so if you've got any questions, pop them into the chat, and then Nigel or Chris will be looking at them and bringing them up so that we can talk about them as they come up, or we can chat about them at the end. So part of the webinar is to celebrate our partnership with the School of Electrical Engineering, Computing and Math Sciences. So that's why our evening's webinar is titled Emotional Intelligence in Engineering, Science and Mining. And Dr. Nigel Gribble is going to facilitate the webinar tonight alongside one of his colleagues from the School of Electrical Engineering and Computing and Math Sciences. So Nigel's on the board of EISA, and he has the role of emotional intelligence and training. So we go to him when, you know, people are really interested in training, and has been developing some of our tools. Nigel's a lecturer and researcher at the School of Occupational Therapy and Social Work at Curtin University. And Nigel, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Laurel. Fantastic to be with you this evening. For those of us who are live and those who will be listening later, as we put this onto our website and available by YouTube until it goes viral. And to add to that, I'm a dad with two teenage kids who are, one's nearly not a teenager, who I absolutely adore, and I love a good sci-fi movie, and I watched a great horror movie last night. I wrote up there that I'm feeling rushed and chaotic because there's too many things on my to-do list. But, you know, I had a good day today. I got through far too many of them. So, and I'm really, really pleased to be with you this evening. Let me share my screen with you, or in fact, before I do that, I might actually hand over to Simon Forsyth just to quickly introduce yourself. Please, Simon.
Thanks, Nigel. Hello, everyone. My name is Simon Forsyth. I'm the business manager for a very long-titled school, EECMS, and our associated research centres, which there's around about 6 to 8 as well. We have recently engaged EISA to have a partnership with them, and we really view it as a partnership. We think that there's a lot of value that we can gain for our students' future, and also, if we're feeling very brave, for ourselves, the way that our executive managers, our new staff, and the school in general. So I look forward to sharing some of those examples and some of those discussion points, and maybe some questions a little bit later in the session.
Thank you, Simon. And look, it's been very fantastic to have the School of Electrical Engineering, Computing and Mathematical Sciences, as well as Physics. And one of your research projects that I'm always fascinated about is the Square Kilometre Array, which is the world's largest, the universe's largest radio telescope, as far as I understand, multi-billion-dollar project. And that's a really huge research team. I'm just going to share my screen with you, so hopefully you can see my slides. Can you see my slides? Can someone confirm using?
Yes, I can see them, Nigel.
Awesome, fantastic. If I could start flicking through them. So Dr. Susanna Soon is a lecturer in the School of Electrical Engineering and Computing, etc. And she was going to join us today and tell us her experiences of using emotional intelligence with computing students. However, she's come down with that dreaded lurgy that we've heard far too much about over the last couple of years. And but I will be sharing some of her insights with you a little bit later. So what I want to get through today is to give a basic overview of emotional intelligence, just for those who are with us who haven't quite got their heads around that. I want to talk about engineering and science and mining, and how emotional intelligence can help with employability. And I'll explain what that term means, and as well as safety. And I also want to help build, just to share a couple of ideas on building emotional self-awareness. Sorry, just where are we? Okay, that's cool. Okay. So let's just quickly talk about emotions. Emotions are part of us being human. They make us human. I believe that every single experience that I have in my life is drenched in emotions. In fact, emotions may well be the first thing that occurs. I might see something, so there might be some vision, but then there's an emotional reaction that's subtle or huge inside us. And in our personal lives, we know that emotions saturate those in our relationships with our kids and our partners, and the roller coaster roads that we can go on, the amazing emotions we can feel, and those emotions that make us feel like crap. Emotions absolutely drench the workplace, from the moments of success through to the moments of being frustrated and irritated by processes or leadership styles or whatever it might be. And I think really importantly, in the world that we're working in now, particularly for those, everywhere, but for an engineer, for a computer scientist, for a mathematician, we work in teams, and those emotions are there. They really can boil over, but those emotions also push and drive our teams forward. We'll talk about the software engineer from Google in a few slides' time, but he talks about emotions. We need to have a high resolution understanding of our emotions. And that's a real engineering software term, isn't it? A real contemporary term about emotions. So emotions are data. They're telling us something. Emotions are teachers. Emotions for a leader should be aware of the emotions that are percolating through their organization, through their teams. Team leaders should be aware of those because they're telling them something. They're telling them this team is moving in the right direction. It's having moments of success and it's succeeding, or it's telling you that something's starting to shift and change. The emotional pulse is moving and shifting. So any team, any leader, anyone within an organisation should be using emotion as data, not suppressing emotion. It's about being curious about emotions. Curiosity is one of my core values as a human being. I just want to be curious about what's going on in and inside myself, inside others, inside the teams that I work with. And since I've been working on emotional intelligence over the last 10 plus years, I've become more and more intrigued with emotions and starting to view it as data that's really important and really necessary. Emotions create that shift in our thinking, don't they? They shift our thoughts, particularly those emotions that are the bigger ones, the more intense ones. They shift, that they create us to do behaviours that we might not have expected. They change the way we feel. They move and shift our bodies. Our shoulders go up, our eyes squint, our breathing rate changes. Emotions do amazing things to us. So we need to become friends with our emotions and really understand it. Here's a model of emotions through organizations. So from those emotions we feel within the person. Are my slides moving?
Nigel, your slides aren't moving.
Oh, bugger.
There we go. Yep, now it is. I've got, yeah.
Okay, look at that. Look at that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm just going to do this. There we go. now I can see my slides. So this emotion through our organisations, there's emotions obviously within people and then between people, in our interpersonal reactions, when we're in groups, when we're having discussions, when we're brainstorming ideas together in groups, emotions are there. But I think the most intriguing thing about this is that this model by Neil Ashkenazi and Doris from 2016 tells us and makes us really aware that an organisation has an emotional pulse. Even a very large organisation like the one that I work for at Curtin University, I can feel its pulsating emotional energy as that changes and fluctuates with what's happening in and around the organisation as a bigger picture. So why do emotions exist for engineers and miners and professionals? Why do they exist for project teams? Why do they exist for humans? They obviously have a massive purpose. Emotions focus our attention, don't they? They tell us that there's something important in our environment. There's something important in an email. There's something important that's just been said, and we're suddenly surprised to have heard our team leader or somebody in our in the team that we're working on say something, or we're pleasantly amused by what's going on. So it focuses our attention minutely or to the larger picture. It motivates action, doesn't it? You know, if we're having that fear response, it might be a run, it might be a protect, it might be get ready to act. It builds, it gets us ready to interact with people. We see people, we have a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling about that particular person, or we're feeling accepted by somebody, or we're feeling distant, or we're withdrawn, or we're being ostracized by a particular group of people. And it starts and builds, and it can build, but it can also hinder social interactions. So emotions help us with our emotional health, our physical health, our mental health. Yeah, and it helps us assess the importance of what's going on. So what is emotional intelligence? We were lucky enough to host the the World Congress of the International Congress on Emotional Intelligence at Notre Dame University in 2019. And Neil Ashkenazi stood up and said, there's some of us who are really good at remembering things or running fast or playing golf or making money, and others of us, and you know who they are in your lives, people who are really good at understanding their emotions and managing others' emotions. And this is emotional intelligence. It's making good, healthy decisions, good, intelligent decisions using the emotional status and understanding of ourselves, of others, of the people we're with, of our team function at that particular moment in time. There's a definition of emotional intelligence. There's a multiple of these. This is one that matches up to the mixed model of emotional intelligence that I tend to focus on. So it's a set of emotional and social skills that influence the way we perceive and express ourselves, build and maintain social relationships, cope with the challenges that are pushed at us in our environments, and how we use this emotional information in an effective and meaningful way. And lastly, before we start talking a bit more about the core subject of what we're about today, this is just a really nice, simple way to remember some of the key concepts of emotional intelligence. And this is from Mark Brackett's work. He's probably has brought in the most research money of anyone across the world in the realm of emotional intelligence. And he calls it RULER, so R-U-L-E-R, where we recognize our own emotions and those of others, where we're understanding why we're feeling those things, we're understanding why others might be feeling those things. We're starting to use the nuanced vocabulary and being able to label emotions. We're able to express our emotions in the right forum at the right time using a good array of emotional language. And we're starting to be able to regulate our own emotions. To push us into a state where we can behave and adapt and function as best we possibly can. We can also help others regulate their emotions through some of the skills that we build. So that's just a very simple background of what emotional intelligence is. If I can, I'm going to hand over to Simon for a minute or two, or as long as you want to talk, Simon. And why is it that your school, a school that maybe traditionally might not have embraced emotional intelligence, what is it that attracted you to it? And tell us about some of your ideas and plans.
Yeah, thanks, Nigel. I think you sum it up very well. It was, I guess, a curious first meeting that you and I may have had. It's not often that cold data and so to speak, a lot of those sciences are drawn to what emotions are. So I guess I'll take it back to the next, I guess I'll take it back a step and say, well, why? What prompted that first meeting? What prompted that first reach out to you? And it was a discussion that we were having internally with Andrew, who's my head of school, about how do we do better? We were faced with a number of different things each day, and so a lot of our students. And we were reflecting that we're not sure that we'd trade places with them if we were their age as well, because they have to deal with a lot more other things as well, and a whole host of complexities in the world as well. So we were posing a couple of questions to ourselves to lead our executive, who leads our school, who interacts with industry, and who interacts with our students, most importantly. And one of the things we came back to was, the benefit of working in teams and how which teams do well and how they do well. And in a way, we're also reflecting about our own team. It's much easier, I think we all come up with the sporting analogies to discuss a problem at work, because then you're not talking about work, you're talking about this sporting realm, which is far easier to digest. So really, it came about from us thinking about the skills. What skills could we give to our students that would help them accelerate in their understanding of what was required in a very dynamic workplace? We had reflected as a team to say, in a way, we're more connected, and we are. Today we're on Zoom, where not that long ago, I may be showing my age, where this would have only happened either by phone or we'd be in the same room. So in many ways, people talked about being more connected, but in many ways, I think the feedback that we had in our own sort of thoughts had been we're more disconnected. So we're more away from people than it is, and emotions and reading body language and a whole host of other things is really a skill that's a little bit lacking. So that led us to having a couple of chats with people around, and I got Nigel's name, and I'd had some. I've done a fair bit with emotional intelligence in industry, coming from heavy manufacturing, where the stereotypical heavy manufacturing person is an old, gruff male person, the oil covered all over their body, and I have emotions of happy, sad, and angry, and that's about as far as it goes. And we've done a lot of work with our teams in those ones about unlocking the potential of people. That it was okay for them to talk a little bit more than just, how are you doing? Yes, I'm good. How are you doing? Fine. How are you doing? Very good. And so we wanted a way in which we did connect our workplace a little bit better. And we did a number of different things which are pertinent to that industry as well. I then had a look at it and said, hey, why don't we take a little bit of a risk? Because for a lot of our students, they're very, very proficient. Numbers, formulas, a lot of those sorts of things. But what really would set them apart is if they could understand how to work within teams, harness that, I guess, that softer side many people talk about as well. And how could we give them an experience where down the track, when I reflected on my learning, and Andrew here's and a few of our other exec as well, is that we learned a lot of these emotional stuff because we were either good at it or someone sort of pulled us aside, usually in our late 20s, early 30s, and said, hey, I'm kind of doing it this way. Or, for me, it was talking to someone else who I admired and said, hey, how do you do that? It's like, how are you engaging people in that way? I can do it sometimes, but how do you do it in a more structured way? And for that, I'd said, hey, I think we need to go talk to Nigel. And I'd heard that you'd done a talk about emotional intelligence, and I thought it was wonderful that EISA was actually almost part of the university itself. It was so close to us. It's, Nigel, I think you and I are about 500 meters apart, maybe, and yet almost so far away. And so we wanted to work out what that would look like for us and what it would look like for our students. If we could have science students that could be exposed to this a little bit sooner and could actually work out why sometimes in teams they felt that the team worked well after 2 seconds and why teams didn't work well after a year. If we could give them those skills, they were very transferable skills to match with their academic proficiency, that they would be really job ready. I know that's a bit of a cliched term, but they were ready to take on a job and understand, how do I feel about it today? It's okay for me to feel many things. It's okay for me to express many things. And so we were looking to help our students in that way. And that's gone really well. We started thinking about how we're teaching it as part of the curriculum. Do we have it as a standalone subject, or do we integrate it into each of the different modules and each of the different units that we have? And I don't think we've got the answer to that yet. I think we see the benefit of having it as just part of the academic knowledge that we're trying to impart and the academic experience. It's part of that. It's not its own little subject that sits over to the side and you do it for, I've done the unit around emotional intelligence and tick, there's 4 weeks later, I'm doing well. Now that's going to be a challenge for us. The second part of it, Nigel, is really around, I'd say there's a deeper reflective piece, and I go back to your model, and it's about understanding yourself and then understanding others and understanding teams. And when Andrew and I looked at it, we also saw that for the teams that we led and the executive and the boards that we were on at the same time as well, is that if they could be better, right? If we could emotionally connect better, and if we understood emotional intelligence and we made it something that people could just talk about, and you could say, as we did at the start, hey, how are you feeling? 99% of people I talk to say great, say good. I get the occasional, it's terrible, and then I come in, we talk, and things like that as well. But there's a whole piece around naming emotions, and it's very okay. And we don't have that. We've got work to do on that. And if our teams could do it, and if the teams that we led could do that, and we could do that ourselves and show that vulnerability that, hey, it's okay to feel overwhelmed. It doesn't mean that everything's out of control. It just means that I feel overwhelmed at the moment. And there's ways in which we can regulate that and work with that as well. And so we wanted it for, firstly, students. We wanted it also for our own teams to reflect to that. So then the next question comes about, well, how do you do that? Where do we start? And we took the very, I guess, some would say brave decision But for Andrew and I, it was a very straightforward one of, well, the first step is for us to lead. And one way that you can lead is going along to the first workshop that Nigel was putting on at Curtin. And we said, our executive will be there first and foremost. And then we picked another discipline as well to come along with us. But our executive was there because we needed to educate ourselves. We needed to brush up on what does it mean? What does it look like? We needed to go on that journey to understand, well, what's everyone else going to go through as well? And we wanted to make sure that people understood that if we're willing to put ourselves out there and be vulnerable, that we would encourage them to take a similar journey of, and it's, you know, I felt before that course, that, you know, I felt vulnerable, I felt a little scared, I felt quite excited, all at the same time. And that journey for people around me as well, I watched with great pride them go on their own journey. Some people were excited to start off with and then were really inspired. Other people, you know, were detached, I'd say, and not as interested, but then became quite large advocates of it over that course as well. So for us, if I recap on that, Nigel, it's around what could we do for our students beyond teaching them the, you know, the X's and O's, I guess, or the, you know, the zeros and ones, I believe. What could we do beyond that? Like, what could we give them, and how could we teach them something more that would help them be ready for industry? Secondly, it was really around, you know, our introspective. How do our teams function? How do our committees? How do our ones that lead the school function? How can we operate better between ourselves and also within ourselves? And then the third bit for us was really around what can we do now? Like, how do we actually translate that from what seems like a good idea into actually leading and paving the way for others to say, hey, not so much I want to follow, but hey, could I know some more? Could you tell me some more about this? And that's sort of our journey so far.
I absolutely love it, Simon. I love that we're really what your leadership team is now starting to do. It's now, let's all be curious about emotions and emotional intelligence. I don't know if you can flip your camera around to show the posters that are on the on the floor.
I live in a pile at the moment, so yes.
So what's Simon and his team? Simon's been amazing at trying to just move and shift even just the physical environment in the school, and what you just saw there was some of the emotion wheel. With this is what can help you build that nuanced vocabulary. Instead of saying I'm feeling, you know, happy, you can say I'm feeling proud and inquisitive today, which just gives you so much more meaning. And I just think that these are the little things that can start to shift a culture, Simon. So really credit to you guys. Just out of interest, does anyone want to got a question for Simon after his little piece there?
Not a question, but just in terms of, you know, what you're doing, that really resonates with the literature and how, you know, teaching EI and that authentic leadership, you know, what you do, what you model is, you know, kind of what attracts other people and students to come to, you know, to watch you. So that's really great.
Yeah,
wonderful. Go,
thanks
Simon.
for that. I'll share with everyone, and that it hasn't been easy. That in many ways it's been brutally hard. I've had many conversations many times over, but I've also seen a slow change in some people. I've seen people blossom in many different ways to encourage others. I've seen our team really tackle the same conversations we would have had 2 months before and the same problems 2 months before in a totally different way, in a richer way, in which everyone felt that they were heard, but also could articulate a whole host of other things as well, in which we got the solution. We had our recent executive today and solved quite a complex problem about how we would move forward on these things as well. And I know, and the nature of it as well, because it is so tough, it's not that I go, aha, this is because we did that emotional intelligence training. Right? It's not about that. Inside I could celebrate inside, but watching the team come to an agreement that, hey, you know, okay, this is the way forward, and I hear what you're saying, and this is how we're going to come together, and this is what we need to do, is something that's there. So please, I have probably made it sound very, very easy and very, very simple. It is hard, it is difficult, it is challenging, it is overwhelming at times, but it's also exciting, it's also enthralling, it's also addictive, it's also very inspiring as well. So I'll just add that as a bit of a caveat.
Simon, I'm really looking forward to when we can start to point inside the computing or the mathematical or the engineering curriculum and start to go, there's something in and around, building teamwork, which is the key skill. And obviously that's in your curriculum, but it's underpinned by some of the key emotional intelligence skills. Yeah, fantastic. Look, what I might just do quickly is Susanna Soon, who's the computing lecturer. Is that right, Simon?
Yes.
Yeah, so she was going to join us today, and what she was going to talk about was a assignment that her third year software engineering students have just completed. So intriguingly, they had to design an app that was going to solve a world's problem. So something that was related to the United Nations Sustainable Goals. So there was apps being designed around people who are homeless, sort of our climate change and things like that. So these are computer science students designing an app that's going to align with the United Nations Sustainable Goals. But as we know, with any sort of group of people who come together, who get thrown together into a team, there's a progression of how they work together, from norming and storming and forming, norming, storming, I think it is. But anyway, she gave me some of the feedback. So she got some feedback from the students sort of midway through the semester. And then at the end of the semester, and it was just interesting, sort of the emotional overlay. So the students had to give feedback on other students in their teams. So there were students who said, they didn't do anything, and I did all of the work. They made me feel awful because I had to do all of the work. There were some students who were really caring, just saying, that person was having issues, they needed to work on, and we'll just work around you. We'll work out what's going on. Where the others were really unforgiving, and person X did nothing in the group; they were just baggage. And while others were afraid to bring up discontent within the group, particularly early on, and then as the groups formed and came a bit more mature, they were able to express some of those emotions. Down to groups that were working really well. Best team ever. This guy made me laugh so much. And it was those groups that were having those comments that led to the higher quality output as a result. So I don't think there's anything overly surprising in there. I just think it would be really nice if a group of computing students or a group of engineers getting together to work on a project can actually start off with that emotional vulnerability that Simon was talking about, that ability to go out there and go, look, I am nervous about the project. It's a big thing. We've got $1 billion to deliver this engineering pipeline project that's going to, make Australia billions and billions of dollars, and or make our company billions and billions of dollars. But it'd just be nice if we can really get the humans to start there. Simon, you were talking about the language that starts to form. As more and more people understand it, they start to form a language. I was lucky enough to go to the, I don't know if anyone's into Brené Brown's work, but this is her Dare to Lead leadership program. So it was a 3-day workshop. And so one of the words that we learned out of that is the word rumble. Right. So if what a rumble is I might walk into Simon's office and say, right, we need to have a rumble about, nothing's happening with changing curriculum, right? But the second I use the word rumble, what it means is we're entering a conversation where there's going to be risk. We're going to lay honesty on the table. There's going to be uncertainty about what's going on. And there's going to be emotional exposure and emotional honesty. But at the end of the conversation, we're going to be okay. And that's what a rumble means. And imagine a team, that's working out on an oil rig, who's working on a huge multi-million dollar, million line program, piece of software. They can have these rumbles, and to use that language that starts to build the emotional honesty and vulnerability that we know is at the core in some parts of emotional intelligence. I'll just go back to my slides, and there's no way I'm going to get through all my slides, but that's okay. let me just share my screen again. Cool. So I did find some documents on looking at engineering in the future. So this is a document written a couple of years ago, looking sort of 15, 20 years in the future. And you can see on the right side about how important emotional intelligence is. You know, the future of engineering work is more complexity, multidisciplinary projects with, you know, engineers, software engineers, mathematicians, you know, maybe even a psychologist. You know, there's a couple of psychologists out there, maybe healthcare professionals, maybe teachers, who knows what projects, what professions are needed. Greater public accountability and greater societal engagement, you know, making a difference to our human experience. So, you know, to work in these more complex and these more global pictures, we need engineers who are understanding emotional intelligence, who've got the interpersonal skills to deal with conflict, to talk about the elephant in the room before the software code fails 1 million times and costs $1 million. We need personal skills of resilience and adaptability. We need flexibility and global awareness. And that means all of those things are underpinned by an emotional skill set. Looking a bit further into this document, it talks about engineers needing to work with higher order soft skills. At least they put the words higher order there. I'm no fan at all of soft skills, because everything that follows this in red is really actually very difficult. Showing empathy and being able to do that in a productive, efficient way. You know, we can't sit around you know, caring and patting each other on the back for hours and hours each day. We need to show the empathy quickly, understand what's going on for the individual or for the team, express that, be open and honest, and have our rumble, and now move forward. We need to make emotional judgments. The decisions we make not only affect money and profit and the deliverables, but they affect the people and the teams of people, and they affect the communities that these engineering projects or these software projects ultimately impact. Pure technical ability will no longer be sufficient. We need creative and interpersonal skills. Brené Brown talks about there is no creativity without vulnerability. Find me an engineering and software development team who has no vulnerability at all, who do not feel safe at all to talk about what's going on. And I promise you that there's very little creativity coming out into their code or into their engineering projects. When we allow the vulnerability, when we allow the emotional honesty, that's where creativity is born from. So if creativity is born from risk and uncertainty and emotional exposure. I've got an idea is a great statement if you're prepared to make it. If you don't feel psychologically safe, emotionally safe, you're never going to put your hand up and say, I've got this idea, and that might have been the next iPhone. This is a really important and intriguing model in my life, because this actually was the absolute catalyst for my PhD. When I started looking for a PhD topic some 13 years ago, I started looking at all sorts of things related to occupational therapy students doing fieldwork placements, and stumbled across the idea of employability. And employability is, it's not can we get a job, it's can we get a job, can we maintain our employment, can we, and most importantly, are we satisfied in that in that employment that we have attained. So as I was looking for models, I came across this one and saw that emotional intelligence was just a key part of employability, and particularly that satisfaction. We need people who have got the abilities to deal with the teams that they have to work with, to deal with the emotions that are you know, saturating those teams, and the decisions that are made, as well as the generic skills. They need the degree or whatever it is, knowledge that they have to gain. They need the work experience and the wherewithal to sort of continue to develop their learning. And it's only with reflection and evaluation that people build this self-efficacy, this belief in their own skills, and this belief that they are worthy to be employed in the jobs that they're doing. That builds self-esteem, it builds self-confidence, and that builds this ultimate thing around employability. But you know, self-efficacy is underpinned by if there's doubt, if there's emotional, if we're not in a situation where we can be emotionally safe, then self-efficacy is never really going to build. People aren't going to be overly satisfied in their jobs. They're going to feel distant or aggressive in their jobs. They're going to feel bored, overwhelmed, out of control, unfocused, indifferent, apathetic. I'm just reading words off my emotion wheel there. So yeah, really interesting model. Here's a job that I found, a graduate engineer, you know, team player, ability to work autonomously, taking initiative. Here's a model of Vanessa Druskett, is probably one of the world leading researchers on emotional intelligence in teams and in teams in the corporate world. And she talks about group emotional intelligence. Imagine a group that has high levels of being able to express their own emotion, people who can care and reach out and show empathy, people who can help others regulate their emotions when stuff's going on in their lives. What's that build? It builds trust and it builds self-efficacy. It builds participation, cooperation, collaboration, and thus better decisions, more creativity, more productivity, better product. You know what? More money. So there's a lot of research out there that's backing up that group emotional intelligence is something that we need to be working towards. Many of you might be aware of the Stanford design process, and it starts with empathizing. It starts with trying to understand the needs of the people. It's trying to understand the community that the software project might be, the software app might be delivered into, or the community where the dam's being built by the engineer. Yeah, so I mean, it's just so nice to see that we've got, you know, these really, you know, commonly, frequently used design models now starting with some. Let's understand humans as emotional beings, and now let's design something that's going to actually satisfy humans emotionally, and that's where you get success. Is where the human feels some sort of connection, human satisfaction with the product that they have in their hands. Remember the emotions you felt when you first picked up an iPhone. Obviously, people working in these fields, engineering, science, mining, they're leaders of teams. And you might just be a new graduate engineer, but you're still bringing a leadership. You're still having to do this. And you think about all the words that I've highlighted in red here. You know, managing politics takes the ability to have a vulnerable conversation. Building bridges between people is where empathy is so important. Talking about hard to talk about some subjects. This is the rumbles. Acting courageously in risky situations means emotional exposure. Connecting with people is not a easy thing for some people, but it's so important in making sure that the projects move forward and building those trusted relationships. Look, I might just finish up on this controversial slide. Chris Skinner, who's with us today, sent us all a document this morning about engineering, and it just highlighted that, you know, engineering, is this right, Simon? Is engineering still a male-dominated profession? Is your school?
Engineering and many other places are making strides to address that, but it is still very much a male.
Do you have any idea of the stats in your school that's, you know, engineering, maths and computing?
For us, we would be, yes, I do have an idea of what that is.
Yeah, okay. Moving and shifting. Yeah. So where are we? It's 4:45, 4:45. Yeah, it is an interesting one. I mean, the research on emotional intelligence using the mixed model that I use actually tells us that there is no significant difference between males and females' total emotional intelligence scores. There are some difference in some of the key components of emotional intelligence. However, that's how they score on the tests. How males versus females use emotions and are aware of their emotions in the workplace. I think that's something that's a whole different kettle of fish. Has anyone got any comments on that?
Yeah, Nigel, Chris here. I'd be interested in Simon's view on that first a little bit more. Does he have any comments about sort of, given his comments about the culture and the difficulty in some ways, but working really well with getting it established? Did you have any comments, Simon, about that sort of way of linking in EI into that sort of that sort of cultural attributes, if you want to use that term?
Coming recently from industry, I think that does speak a lot. An industry of glass making, heavy manufacturing is very much that. Is very much that. I think that these industries as well are making some change, but overall, I think that's incredibly accurate. Coming into tertiary, I think it is a little bit more in my 2 years from what I've seen. There's more so a willingness from students and an expectation that we do engage in different ways and that we do provide a richer experience other than just this plus this equals this. And I think students themselves are reaching out to know that. So for ECMS, we partner with student groups, but we are very deliberate that they match the same values that we have. And there hasn't been a student group yet out of the 8 that we've formally partnered with this year that hasn't been able to express very quickly how the diversity of their executive, so the student group that leads, the group of students that leads that student group can very quickly and in a very articulate way talk about how they're actually doing something around equity and equal opportunity, and equal opportunity in the broader sense of different perspectives and different emotions and different ways in which they're caring for their members as well. And so we can see a groundswell from our students that are coming through that are expecting something different, and that are expecting that they not only will learn something different, but the people that are teaching them, the organisations like universities that are nurturing them, for want of a better word, are embracing these as well. Now, I think there are some really well-known areas in which the stereotypes do match that. Engineering, hard sciences, a lot of those ones have been male dominated and in many cases still are. And to change that around does take some effort, right? It won't change overnight, but we can't also sit back and go that the task is too big to do that. So it's a matter for me of being brave, promoting different ideas, having tough conversations about, why did we do that? Well, let's come in. As Nigel said, you create a language, whether it's the word rumble or whether it's emotional intelligence or whether it's or whether it's the art of storytelling. It's having that conversation with someone to go, well, this is why we're doing that. I think you need to reinforce that in many different ways. So yes, you will lead in a certain way. Yes, in our physical environment, we make sure we've got these emotion wheels up. We make sure that we've got signs welcoming people as well. We've done a lot around that space. So you need to match up a number of different small steps, and that gets you on your journey. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to be successful. So in summary, yes, I do agree with that. I think the more times that we talk about these things, the more they become a very safe topic to keep talking about. So we talk about emotions. Andrew talks about his. I talk about mine. I'll tell you now, the first time, even though I believe in it, I'm certainly no expert. I will continue to try and learn every day. But the first time that I talked to my team and had to convey to them that, I felt a little bit, and that time I think I used the word, vulnerable. And at that stage, I also said scared because I was watching them going, if I say vulnerable, what's going to happen? What is going to happen? So, and that is very in male-dominated industries, workplaces, environments. That conversation is much harder to have. So I think that's all of it. And then I think the family model and the role of fathers is changing, and it's changing from a young age. It's changing from the younger generations expecting more of their father. So, for example, when I was growing up, My father, we didn't hug each other after about 14. It was just kind of how it was. That's an emotional piece as well. It didn't mean we love each other anymore. And then around about 30, I went to hug him and things like that as well. And okay, it felt okay. And now there isn't a time where I don't say, goodbye to my father, and we hug and we actually engage in a deeper way as well. And so there's so many different things. It's physical environment. But the key for it is that if you're aiming to do one or two things, it's not going to work. You've got to just keep doing it every day, and it's got to be backing things up, physical environment, how you're talking, who you're partnering with, and things like that. So apologies, I know I've talked for a long time in answer to a very short question, but that would be my overall response to it as well.
It was a good answer.
I hope so anyway.
Absolutely. Look, I need to finish up. I did
a question.
Oh, sorry. Go.
I never had a question.
That's all right. I'll catch Simon.
No, please.
No, please.
I'm really fascinated with that whole idea of the physical environment. I've worked with a lot of. I'm from the School of Law and Business, and I've worked with a lot of young female entrepreneurs, and they, in particular in the startup world, and they go to these startup fests, and they sit on crates, eat cold pizza, and drink out of a keg, or work really hard until 1 o'clock in the morning, and then go to the pub, and that's where all the business stuff gets done. And I think that physical environment is really important to note, and it kind of reflects the values, what's important. It's important that you stay, out until all hours of the night. Your family life isn't as important, and those sorts of subtle messages. So I'd be really interested to hear, not necessarily now because we're about to finish, but I would love to hear, even what does a welcome sign look like in your office, Simon, that would, send those kinds of messages. I think it would be really fascinating to see those things.
Well, I'll certainly answer your question with an invite. We're in building 314. Level 3, you are always welcome at any stage. We have a number of different displays which have tried to bridge that, what does a welcome piece look like? And more than happy to talk through each of them. They are carefully selected when we're talking to people as well. And I can talk you through some of the conversations that people have asked at the same time as well as to, well, why do we have that one? So yes, the physical environment is important. I hear what you're saying about especially the entrepreneurial world, and look, there's a longer response which we probably don't have time for now, but I'm very happy to invest the time to be able to meet with you and go through it. So please, you're welcome anytime. Building 314.
I think it'd be absolutely, I'm talking to the board here, just a fascinating topic of how to introduce this concept of emotional intelligence into an organisation, and to actually get a few people who've tried things like Simon's really early in the process. It'd be interesting to talk to people who have been trying it for a little bit longer also about what's worked and what doesn't work. But look, absolutely fascinating.
Good topic for a symposium or some sort of future workshop night.
It is. I'm going to finish up. I'll hand over to Laurel to wind things up.
Thanks, Nigel. That was excellent. I mean, and to hear the groundswell of everything that's starting, and sometimes, evolution, not revolution. We have to, think about how we're going to go. So you do it well. And so it does become part of the culture and part of who we are. And this is the way we act. Because, like if you're going from top down, sometimes, you can't, it's really difficult to make change. We have only so much energy, and we have to think how we're going to use that energy so that we can, like we're just a small board of 6 people who want to change the world, but we've all got really busy lives. And so we have to go, well, where can we put our stuff? And the same with you, Simon, you've got so much on your plate to do academically, and you go, well, I'm going to try and add that onto it. And so, that authenticity is what people are going to take away. When they remember Simon, they're going to go, he was a great guy. I want to be like Simon, And I think that's what we all try to do. And we're trying to instill into others, that self-awareness, so we do become authentic. So, keep going, and it just sounds wonderful. And so thank you, Nigel, and especially thank you, Simon, for your time this evening. We really do appreciate it. And Susanna, if you can send our warm regards to Susanna and hope that she recovers really well. And so this will be, and thank you to Clara for listening and still being here. And we will put this on the website so that, you know, there was a lot of information there and there was a lot of really good slides. I actually took a couple of snaps of the slides. I thought, oh, I like that diagram. I really like that diagram. And so, you know, so you can go back over and have a look and kind of really digest what's on there. I would just also like just to recognise that Chris Skinner is the chairperson of Emotional Intelligence Society, and Annette Watkins, who's here tonight, is our secretary, and manager, who is all things on how do we run an organisation and be legit, and just like to recognise that they're here as well tonight. And so as we go, I hope that you all have a really good evening, and thank you very much for being here. And thank you, Nigel, for all that time and effort. They were great. Simon. Okay. See you later. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Simon.